I wanted to share an experience from my late teen years, one that involves going abroad and staying with a rather creepy host family. Here goes. Basically, some of my classmates in high school and I, along with some teachers of ours, went on a month-long trip around Europe to study, and as we only spent 1 week in each city, we stayed with a multitude of host families. The trip had been going amazingly. My friend and I, who had chosen to stay together in our accommodation, had had a really good experience with the old lady that we stayed with in the first part of the trip, so we were really excited to meet our next hosts. We had been encouraged to write an email to each of our hosts a week before we left home, just so that they could get to know us, and we could get to know them, which helped making our first interactions less awkward. However, I had sent a really nice email to the father of this family, let's call him John, and he never replied. I didn't think much of it then. Maybe he hadn't seen it, or maybe just didn't want to answer, which is totally valid in my book. But just when we got off the plane, that's when I got an email from him, which merely said, "Hello, let me know when you get on the bus." I thought it was a bit cold, a bit detached, but I do tend to be a bit overly friendly sometimes. This stems from being extremely socially awkward myself, so I figured it was probably just me being too intense or something. A cab took us to their house, and we were greeted with the strongest glare I had ever experienced. Again, me being overly friendly, I just kept saying hi and thanking him over and over for everything, but his glare was unrelenting. First at us, then at the taxi driver, up until the point where the cab left. Then he opened the door and let us inside. Before he had even said hi or showed us around the house or anything of the sort, he made us stand in the narrow entryway and began telling us the rules to his house, which is normal and to be expected, but the way he said them, we all found it very intimidating, basically stating that we had to take extreme care of his house, or we'd have to pay for anything and everything we damaged, which again is valid. But he didn't stop the intense stare at us, almost as if we had already broken something. He ordered us to take off our shoes and told us our room was on the 3rd floor. Then he left, so we had to carry our suitcases up the very, very tiny, narrow stairs, not even knowing really where we were going, because we obviously didn't know the layout of the house, and he hadn't bothered to show us the way. But whatever, we thought. It's probably just the nature of these awkward introductions. But the awkwardness had only just begun. We were called down for dinner and sat waiting whilst he cooked for us and his daughters. He asked which one of us was vegetarian. That would be me. After explaining how stupid and unhealthy I was for not eating meat, and how being a vegetarian would take 10 years off my life, which just left me wondering where he got that information, he handed me this tiny bowl of 5 lettuce leaves. Again, very weird, but we wouldn't even have dinner at their house, since the school we were exchanging into covered our meals, something that to this day, I'm still so very glad about. He started asking really specific and private questions, like, how much money have you brought? Where do you keep it so you don't lose it? And do you come from rich families? I can't speak for everybody, but I'm going to. It made us all very uncomfortable, so we just said we didn't know and tried our best to change the subject. He also ordered us to never speak in Spanish, which was our mother tongue, so long as we were there, even if we were alone, inside or outside of the house. This was a rule that we found it hard to abide by, mainly because we speak Spanish. It's not like we have trouble speaking English, but it was ridiculous when we were literally talking alone. However, on the occasions when he'd hear us speaking Spanish in our room, which I still don't know how he did, he'd come up to yell at us for not conversing in English. Yes, this man, who we had only met a day before, took it upon himself to scold us as if we were his own children. We also later learned that his wife suffered from a disease, one that I'm not going to go into detail for, citing privacy reasons, but we didn't see her around much. That night, as we were wrapping up our evening, my friend took a shower first, and then me, and whilst I was getting dressed in the bathroom, he came into our rooms and started talking to us and asking us other questions, personal things. Again, this was rather uncomfortable because I was still in the bathroom, and he kept coming near the door to ask me stuff before turning back to talk to my friend. But after a while, he left and things settled down. We discussed that it was really weird, and we were actually worried about the money questions because it was his house, and he could easily just come in the room in the middle of the night, open our suitcases, and do whatever he pleased. Next morning, we got up really early and came down for breakfast. To be honest, we had sort of high expectations because our last host was absolutely the best. So we were expecting that he would at least have a slice of bread for us. Yeah, he didn't. But that's not the bad part. While the whole family was eating at the table, he told us to just go through the cabinets and pantry, that there would surely be something to eat. I personally didn't feel comfortable with raiding this family's kitchen while they were there just staring at me. My friend grabbed a banana because she didn't know what to do either. I said that I wasn't hungry, so we just left and decided to no longer have breakfast at their house at all because most of the interactions held between those four walls was too awkward for us to stomach. And I know, you must be thinking that I'm overreacting. But first of all, I didn't know these people, and it was so uncomfortable. In addition, my own social anxiety didn't help at all, and I just couldn't bear being there. As I said, since we had dinner at school, we didn't really spend a lot of time with them. We really only showered and slept there, and that was that. But somehow in the little time we were at this house, he always found a way to make us feel more and more out of place. We had to let him know via text when we were on our way home, and I'd always be polite, also friendly. So I'd just say, "Hi John, we're about 5 minutes away," always with a little exclamation mark to seem nice, I guess. But the second night, we arrived home, and as we went through the front door, he came stomping his way towards us, absolutely furious, like he was ready to punch a wall. He started yelling at me, telling me to never, ever text him or any adult like that again. I was so incredibly confused and scared, like, what did I even send to him? He pulled out his phone and made me read out loud the message. He said normal people do not text like that it was very disrespectful, and proceeded to show the text to everyone around the house and asking them what they thought of this, and if anyone had ever texted them like that. He was so angry about a simple exclamation mark. I was livid inside, like absolutely on the verge of tears and running out of the house. I just said sorry before heading to our room. Then he came up smiling as if nothing had happened, before having the audacity to ask, "Have you brought gifts for any of us?" Well, we had. We had bought them a beautiful picture frame and lots of sweets from our country. We had spent a lot of money on them. We handed it over to him, and he was acting like this little kid at Christmas time. However, when he opened the gifts, he looked at them like we had given him a bag of trash. "This is it?" he asked, frowning. I thought it was going to be something better. I figured since we were letting you stay in our home. But I guess it's fine. Thanks. It was obvious that he was disappointed when he left the room. We continued to have really bad encounters with him, telling us off like we were his daughters, that he could just yell at like it was nothing. At night, we'd hear screaming, fighting, banging, and crying. My friend wanted to contact accommodation services to ask for a host switch because we were truly having a horrible time, running away from our host at every opportunity we had to avoid any other type of interaction. But I refused to follow her lead. Dumb, I know. Firstly, I was too shy and scared of what could happen when we told him we were leaving for another home. And also, I felt really bad because of his wife. And I didn't want to give the family a hard time when they were presumably already struggling with medical care, and hosting was their only income. My friend was mad at me for a bit, but ultimately she came to the same conclusion that I did. And as badly as we wanted to leave, we sucked it up. We had also gotten lost at some point while we were on the night bus back home. Luckily, there was a teacher from the school who we knew, and she walked us home. She asked who we were staying with, and we told her we were staying with John, and mentioned that it happened to be a little uncomfortable there. Her face changed a little bit from happy to sort of worried. Yeah, I know him. We've been told that he is a bit special. But that's it, really. Don't worry about it. Yeah, you try to spend a night in that madhouse, and then you tell me about it. When we told John about us getting lost and the teacher helping us, he seemed so interested, but in a very creepy way. He said that he knew the teacher, and then he asked us how she was. The creepiest part, he asked us if we knew where she lived. And I don't mean this offhandedly. He asked 2 or maybe 3 times. We had seen her house, but we told him no, because I think we all found it kind of weird. The last full day there, he had told us that he probably wouldn't be home when we arrived, since he mentioned he was meeting a friend or something like that, but that he would arrive no later than 10 minutes after we did. We arrived home that night, and as he said, he wasn't home. This time, the only one home was the wife. It was our first time getting to chat with her alone. She was so nice. She seemed genuinely like the only sane person there. We talked for a while, actually, and then we thanked her profusely for everything, even though we both found her husband to be a nightmare. We told her that she had a very beautiful family. But at that admission, she stopped smiling and said, "You think so? I don't think so, but thanks anyway." Then there was a very awkward silence. For about 30 seconds, neither of us knew what to say to respond to that. So after a bit, we just nervously laughed before saying goodnight. John didn't return until almost midnight. He asked us if we had any laundry to do. I did. Some of my clothes I'd been wearing for a week and really needed to be washed. But then he said that he would do it, but wouldn't let me help or do it myself. And honestly, this might be a reach, but I really didn't want to give him my clothes for some reason. It just felt off. So I ended up declining, saying I remembered that I actually had washed them, which I knew wasn't believable, but there was no way I was handing him my stuff. He kept insisting, asking over and over again if I was sure, to which I replied that I was. The next morning, we were so excited to finally be able to leave that house after a week that felt more like a month. We had our things ready and took our stuff down the stairs to the main entrance, waiting for the cab to pick us up. That's when John came downstairs and began to make small talk with us. He kept looking out the window over and over again, as if he were looking for something. We thanked him for the hospitality, which wasn't provided, but you gotta be polite, I guess. And he started rambling about how he loved hosting students, that he'd been doing this for like 10 years, things like that. Then he started saying some really weird stuff, like, "But you have to be careful, because you don't know who you could be staying with. There's some crazy people out there, you know?" I swear to God, I was about to escape, getting ready to run, when the cab pulled up. That's when he started suddenly acting super happy and nice, like we had the greatest relationship. He hugged my friend, and then went in to hug me. I reluctantly hugged him back for maybe a second before I was out that door. As soon as I stepped out of the house, he slammed the door shut so loudly that even the cab driver looked scared. John glared at us through the little window while we got in the cab and drove off. And I've never been so relieved in my life. It was like a weight being pulled off my shoulders. And you bet that I blocked his number with a quickness afterwards, glad that I would never have to see them again in my life. I understand that families have their issues, but that man was absolutely terrifying, even though I'm really thankful I at least had a place to shower and sleep for a week. I'm sorry for anyone that has had to stay with him in over his 10 years of hosting, or may have to in the future. But I encourage everyone out there, don't be like me. If you feel uncomfortable, leave. No one is going to be mad at you. I'm lucky nothing more than the overall weirdness and verbal abuse happened to me. But there's tons of cases in which these stories take a much darker turn. Better safe than sorry. A little backstory to start. I'm a female and currently 27 years old at the time of writing this, but the encounter I'm going to describe took place when I was around 21. At that age, I moved to a new city for school. I didn't know a single soul, and I was suffering from your typical first time away from home loneliness. A lot of this had to do with being separated from my best friend for the first time ever, and I was desperate for some sort of companionship. I took to dating apps to try and build some sort of bridge. I had a couple of dates, which ultimately didn't work out, but I guess that isn't so important. I matched with this one guy. He seemed like the whole package. He was cute, he was into the same type of music I was, the same art that I liked, and we had a mutual love for Stephen King. We talked for about a week, eventually exchanging numbers, and continued talking in more depth. I was young and naive enough at that time that I started to catch feelings for this guy, and I honestly thought that I was falling for him. We talked in depth for about another week. He got to know me very personally, and it was scary to me just how much we had in common. We made a date to meet at the bar. He told me he was running a little behind and to go have a drink at the bar without him, but that he would meet me there. It was sort of late afternoonish, so the area was fairly empty. There were 2 other girls that showed up at the bar during my time there. One of the girls had broken our silence by saying that she was here for her first date with a really cute guy, and she happened to be nervous, before asking if me or the other girl had any advice for her. I thought that was really cute. I was there for a first date too, and I was extremely excited about it. The other girl, funny enough, was there for a first date as well. We shared our thoughts and really hyped each other up. It was a total sister bonding moment. That was until we all drew the conclusion that we were there to meet the same guy. Same pictures, different names, different personalities. This guy had played us all in a big way. Believe it or not though, this was actually a huge letdown that turned into something good. The 3 of us girls ended up hitting it off naturally, and we stayed at the bar and talked. Since then, the 3 of us had become really close, and both of them, my 2 new best friends, are serving in my upcoming wedding. We just clicked over the mutual embarrassment. But onto the subject of my story, in regards to my wedding. Over the weekend, I had my bachelorette party trip. My fiance had his bachelor party trip over the weekend as well. He and his friends were staying at a fishing camp, while me and my friends were at an Airbnb not very far away. It wasn't a huge trip or anything like that. We just wanted to have a good time. Well, we were really enjoying ourselves. I had to go shopping one day at a nearby store, where my longtime best friend and 2 other best friends joined me. Not to give TMI, but I had to buy a new bra. That may be a little bit more relevant in a bit. That night, we're playing Cards Against Humanity and having some drinks. It got to the portion of the evening where my mom wanted to go around the room so everyone could tell how they met me, or a cringe story, or anything that they wanted to share. I wasn't really looking forward to that, but it's customary. And, oh, did it lead to something? One of my best friends, the one that I met in the bar, came forward for her turn and laid quite the truth out on the table. So the day where the 3 of us showed up for a date with the same guy didn't happen by chance. It was completely and meticulously orchestrated. You see, she was having trouble making friends of her own, and she noticed me and the other girl at school. She made a fake dating profile after apparently hearing the 2 of us mentioning it at some point, and essentially stalked the app until she found us. This is how she got to know us, which is why we were all able to hit it off so easily. She orchestrated the whole thing in order to make friends. Her cadence and delivery of the story was just so damn strange. It really creeped me out. First of all, it's a big revelation, and it's a strong relationship built on deceit. I honestly felt violated. and very uneasy about the whole thing. My mom did her best to cut through the tension by changing the subject. Later, I was outside playing my guitar when two of my best friends, the long-standing one and the one that didn't just drop the truth bomb, came outside. We discussed it and also mutually agreed that it was really weird, and our other friend had picked one hell of a time to drop it on us. So many things that once seemed so innocent started taking on a more creepy undertone. Just the day before, this girl was in the same fitting room as me, with my tits out, while I was trying on bras. She has pictures of the three of us together on the mirror in her bedroom. I personally got out of that phase when I was in high school, but given the recent revelation, it just adds some more ick to the mix. We've shared very intimate details about some of our lives, and now I'm wondering what's true versus what isn't. I called my fiancé that night and asked if I could see him. With all of this coming to the surface, I missed him more than usual. He was completely thrown off by the story, and he also said that he wouldn't have known what he would have done if one of his buddies did that to him. I feel betrayed, but maybe I'm overreacting. But if I am, I'm not the only one. I guess nobody got hurt, but it was a creepy way of taking advantage of two people who were vulnerable. While I certainly don't plan on canceling my wedding or kicking her out of the festivities, I do think that once we're done with this, I plan on stepping back from this friendship. I just don't know if I can get over the deceit. What else has she been lying about? About 4 years ago, I had a supremely strange encounter in, of all places, a Walmart parking lot. While this is something that I've thought a lot about, this is my first time actually sharing it. I'm a guy, and at the time I was 20 years old. I was going to school and working at a small restaurant in my town. Since childhood, I've had an infatuation with Hot Wheels. You know, the toy cars. One of my best friends and I collect them, and Walmarts that are open 24 hours are gold mines for collectible Hot Wheels. At night, they have all the boxes for the inventory they need to unload, just out in the open. So a buddy of mine and I would go down there, open the boxes for them, and put them on the shelves, which allowed us to sort through the boxes first, and we could find the rare cars. It was win-win for the workers, and for us, so it's something we did often, to the point that we knew which days that they got their shipments. Well, one evening, he and I head down to Walmart on our usual trip. We get there, go through everything, and there wasn't much that night. A bit of a miss. I had 2 cars, he had 3. We go to checkout, and ultimately walk out the door. Now, one thing about Hot Wheels is they're in these plastic boxes glued to a cardboard back card. If you had any as a kid, you know what I'm talking about. Basically what this means is we never put the cars in bags when we left, because sometimes they would get bent, and that would severely affect their value. So here we are, me and my buddy walking out of Walmart at 1 a.m. with just a couple of Hot Wheels in our hands. As we walk to my car, a rundown mid-2000s Honda Accord, this guy walks straight up to us from literally out of nowhere. I emphasize that part because I cannot stress enough. This dude actually seemed to appear out of thin air. We're like the only car in the parking lot. The guy looked normal but did give off super creepy vibes, which I imagine very few people who are in a Walmart parking lot at 1 a.m. don't emanate some sort of creep from them. I've known my friend for years, and we both looked at each other with those "something isn't quite right here" look in our eyes. The guy basically explains that his minivan's battery died, and he really needs a jump because he has to get home. He gives us this whole sob story that he has to get back to his daughter, she has school tomorrow, blah blah blah. The weird part about it is, his minivan was all the way in the back of the parking lot, in a pitch black area, with the side door wide open. Out of instinct, I say, "Hey man, I'm sorry, but I don't have any jumper cables, so I can't help." He then explains to us that it isn't an issue, because he's got cables in his car. My buddy gets agitated at this point, kind of snaps at the guy, telling him, "Look man, we're tired. We just got off of work. Leave us alone. We can't help." At this point, the guy gets irate. He begins screaming at us that we have to help him, to stop being inconsiderate, calling us all these names. It was honestly crazy. So in my wisdom, I say, "Hey man, no problem. Our bad. I'll give you a jump. Just let me drive over to you." I hop in my car, and I just drive away. Not like full-blown speeding or hauling ass out of the parking lot. Just driving normal. That's when I look out the rearview mirror, and I see this man full-blown sprinting to his van. I kind of pause for a second to see what he would do. That's when he closes his side door, hops in the driver's seat, turns the car on, and begins driving. So by now, I've seen enough to know that I'm in a sketchier situation than I had originally thought. I get out of there, fly out of the parking lot, get myself and my friend onto the main road. The minivan speeds out of the parking lot and looked as if it was trying to follow us, but if I'm being honest, I wasn't going anywhere close to the speed limit. I was actually flying down the road. I pulled up to a red light, and in my mirror, I could see him off in the distance, but he didn't continue to chase. He just took a U-turn and drove off the other way. I called 911. What they basically told me was, "Hey, that sounds crazy, but there's nothing we can do. Just be safe next time. Don't talk to strangers you find in a parking lot." Fast forward 2 weeks, and I learned that there was a double homicide in that same Walmart parking lot. The suspect was a guy driving a white minivan, and while it happened on a different night, it was around the same exact time that we were in that parking lot before. I know for a fact the dude wasn't casing us for a robbery. We were two young kids with Hot Wheels in our hands. Not exactly prime targets to get jacked. But I'm 99% positive that it was the same guy. And I'm pretty sure we were his first targets. We just got away. They never caught the guy, and I don't really go to that Walmart anymore unless I really need something and it's the only place open. It's also the same reason that I now carry a firearm on me at all times. This is definitely the creepiest encounter that I've ever had, and I think about it frequently, how it could have played out entirely differently for me.